Welcome back. Time for this week's Nanos on the Numbers. Tonight we look at trade following the Prime Minister's visit to Washington and Germany. Let's head to Ottawa. CTV's Don Martin gets the numbers from pollster Nick Nanos.
Okay, thank you, Toronto. Well, it's that time of the week again where we do Nanos on the Numbers, and who else to do that with but Nick Nanos.
Hey, Don.
Same name as anyway, going on.
No coincidence.
We had a big week when it came to the European Free Trade Deal. It was passed by the European Parliament. Our Prime Minister spoke to the European Parliament. Everything's hunky-dory, but we want to find out how Canadians view this. So you've got the potential impacts of new free trade deals. I see you're putting Europe up against Asia.
Yes.
Looks like they like Europe better.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, what's interesting, we wanted to stack up two paths forward for Canadians. Free trade with the European Union and then free trade with the Pacific, Asia Pacific. And
the now dead partnership.
Yes.
Okay.
But when we ask about whether it would have a potential positive or negative impact, you can see that Canadians are more likely to think that trade with the European Union will be good for Canada. You can see basically about 8 out of every 10 Canadians believe that it'll have a positive or somewhat positive impact, compared to Asia Pacific countries, where only about 6 out of every 10 Canadians think that it'll have a positive impact. So people like the idea of trade with Europe, especially compared to the option of some sort of trade arrangement with Asia.
I'm curious, would people when you were polling them have thought Asia Pacific included China?
Yes.
Or it's kind of interesting because we're aiming very heavily to get trade with China boosted, but they don't seem to think that's going to be as good for us as getting it boosted in Europe.
Yeah, actually, the interesting thing is when we've done polling on free trade with China in the past, and by including China in the mix, the proportion of Canadians that think it will be positive actually drops even more significantly than looking at Asia Pacific in general.
All right. Well, generally, you've also looked back over a 5-year period on the impact of free trade deals with the EU. It looks like it's becoming more and more popular.
Yeah. So not only is it comparatively more popular than Asia Pacific as an option, but the intensity of positive views related to free trade with Europe has gone up significantly. The perception of people, you can see it's gone from 14 to 42% in terms of positive, and 26 to 35 in terms of somewhat positive. So a significant turnaround in the last 5 years in terms of Canadians being okay and liking and thinking that trade with the European Union is good for Canada.
Is there a reason you can think of for that sudden shift? Because that's very dramatic, yet nothing's really changed in terms of our economy. It's still heavily dependent on the U.S., and I just wondering why they did that.
It's the T word.
T?
Not trade. Trump.
Trump.
The new order right now in terms of how people see a lot of these issues, it has to do with perceptions related to Trump and what he's doing. So I think Trump's talk about ripping up NAFTA, even though the Prime Minister has come off a pretty good meeting with Donald Trump, and it looks like we're only going to be tweaking NAFTA, that kind of talk makes people think that Europe looks even better as an alternative. And I think right now for a lot of Canadians, they're thinking about Plan B. Plan A is trade with the Americans, but what is Plan B in terms of alternatives to trade with the United States?
All right. Now, we've been documenting a rather alarming free fall for Justin Trudeau's government over the last little while. What do you see in the weekly national ballot tracking?
Well, it's alarming if you're a liberal. If you're not a liberal, you might be enjoying this particular drop. You can see that the latest Nanos tracking has the Liberals at 38%, but they've been trending down. The Conservatives at 33%, they've been trending up. Look at those NDP numbers, they're at 17%, no change. So with all the changes in opinion over the last 6 to 8 weeks, the New Democrats, I guess if we wanted to be kind, we'd say they're holding. If we wanted to be unkind, it would be like people are not looking at the NDP as an alternative to the Liberals. So you can see that gap narrowing to 5 points and between the Liberals and the Conservatives right now.
Now, Justin Trudeau's coming off a pretty big week. We talked about this. He went to Washington, got rave reviews. He's gone to Europe, done well over there according to all indications. Preferred Prime Minister hasn't quite captured that yet.
No, exactly. He still is ahead by a country mile. And you can see 46% of Canadians have him as their preferred choice for PM. He's down 5 points compared to a year ago. Rona Ambrose is at 19.1%, up 4. Mulcair, no change at around 9.6%. So it'll be interesting to see coming off the week whether the negative trajectory in terms of Liberal ballot support stabilizes or reverses, or whether it continues, which maybe that'll happen too.
And Ambrose didn't hit any stormy seas with her little yacht getaway, by the looks of it, over the Christmas break.
No,
So
I think she's benefiting from the fact that people are looking at the Conservatives, and she is the interim leader of the Conservatives right now.
Gotcha. All right, Nick, always a pleasure. Thanks very much. See you next week, and back to you in Toronto.